I took your organization, I took your baby, Turning Point USA, and I f***ed it. And I've been f***ing it. I'd like it. I just get a sick satisfaction out of it.
Hi everyone, so in this video, I'm going to talk about Tucker Carlson's recent interview with Nick Fuentes and why Nick Fuentes isn't the role model we should be platforming for young Catholic men. My name is Victoria Holmes, I'm a podcast producer, and I also work for a political media company, and these videos on Catholicism are sort of a side hobby of mine. So first, I'm sure a lot of you know about Nick Fuentes. He gained popularity back in 2016 when he became sort of a provocateur for the MAGA right. And in this particular clip that I'm about to highlight, he does show a little bit of his background.
I started to think about immigration.
Which you hadn't really considered before?
Never. And the reason why is because I was from a 95% white suburb. So the diversity had not really reached my corner of Chicago yet. Not so much my family, they grew up in the city, but growing up in the suburbs, I was insulated from that.
So first I want to say that the majority of America is not 95% white, and the fact that Nicholas Fuentes was not exposed to real diversity up until he went to college at Boston College in 2016 kind of gives us insight into his background. Next, we learn about one of his big breaks in the political sphere.
Debate wraps up, and this girl who I think I had talked to her on Twitter once or twice comes running up to the stage after the debate, and it's Cassie Dillon. And at this time, she's a fellow at Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's company. She goes, do you want to do a post-game interview after the debate? I said, sure. And so she asked me about how I thought the debate went and what my views are and things like that. And, very normal stuff. And then at the end, she says, I just got back from doing study abroad in Israel. She goes, and it was amazing. Would you ever take a trip to Israel? And I said, no, I think I got everything I need right here in America. She goes, oh. Okay.
So Cassie Dillon has responded to this incident saying that Nick Fuentes didn't truthfully portray their interaction at this time. She says that she doesn't even remember asking Nicholas Fuentes about Israel. I'm going to play this next clip to add a little bit more context about the way that Nick was feeling at this time.
I was friends with a lot of the Daily Wire writers, not just Cassie Dillon, but many of them were Jewish. And I would ask them point blank. I would say, so why do we give Israel all this money? $3.8 billion per year? What is that for? And they would say, well, there's a really good answer for that, but you're asking it in the wrong way. You're asking it in an anti-Semitic way.
So in my opinion, Nick Fuentes grew up with a privileged background, and it wasn't really until he got to college that he experienced, I guess, what would be competition. Yes, he was smart, but he probably wasn't the smartest. Yes, he was talented in terms of writing and being in front of a camera, but he probably wasn't the best. Maybe his Daily Wire peers performed better than him. And so in order to make a name for himself, he had to be a little bit more provocative. And I think this is where his personal ambition kind of made him mock the same type of tactics that Trump was using in order to get popularity in the polls back in 2016, which was to be very bombastic and combative. The combination of him being super ambitious, plus being in a space that was highly competitive, plus not getting the opportunities that he was trying to go after, I think turned him into a provocateur that led him to a lot of the extreme ideas that he has now. I don't believe it's a far stretch to believe that maybe the way that he was framing some of his questions about Israel lent towards more an anti-Semitic lens, simply because he does have a history of trying to say things that are provocative. The way that he says the N-word in his live streams and the way that he'll say a lot of slurs in his live streams does not make it far from impossible for me to believe that maybe he was saying some anti-Semitic stuff as well. So Nick talks about how he's temperamentally not an angry person.
This is my main question to you is when you get attacked, when people call you names, and I never understood why they did that. And then I thought maybe the point is to make me racist. Where you just get to a point where you're like, well, if you're going to slander me, then I'll just become the thing you're calling me. Like distorts you and you actually change and become what they say you are. Have you thought that ever? Do you worry that that happened to you?
No, I don't think it ever did, because I know who I am. I had a very firm grounding of what I'm about, which is that I was deeply Catholic, and I still am, deeply patriotic and pro-American. And I don't consider myself temperamentally to be an angry or a hateful person.
But I think in a lot of his live streams, you can see the exact opposite of that, where he does have crash outs.
Enough with the Jim Crow stuff. Who cares? Oh, to drink out of a different water fountain. Big fucking deal.
Would you say that me having sex with my dog is the same thing as me having sex with a black man?
No. But they would both be degenerate.
Oh!
I'm against race mixing. I would never do that. 9 in 10 blacks vote for Democrats. Why do they do that? God only knows.
Nick Fuentes explains right here that he was frustrated for a little bit of the same reasons I mentioned earlier. I think that his ambition kind of led him more towards these super extreme views, and in order to get the popularity that he wanted, this is what fed that beast.
You know, they say this thing about you look into the abyss and the abyss stares back into you. That never really happened to me. I was frustrated. I was frustrated because I felt like I was being denied a level playing field, opportunity, and it wasn't fair. I felt like I was right, and these people that were basically hypocrites, grifters, not really conservative, they were controlling the conversation, and as a consequence, they were controlling the Republican movement.
So Nick admits that he was frustrated, and I think that's where he started to build resentment towards a group of people to explain why he wasn't getting the opportunities that he felt were deserved for him. I also find this clip interesting because I don't think Nick Fuentes is a conservative. I think if I asked him what his idea of conservatism is, it won't be about small, limited government, because later on in the conversation, he talks about how he wants Trump to come in and tell ICE to control the cities, to arrest the mayor of Chicago, et cetera, which is not at all a characteristic of conservatism.
Why attack them?
Well, in short, they attacked me first.
Yeah, but like, who cares?
I will graciously forgive them for being
But why
so
make
hostile.
it personal? Like, who cares?
It's not personal for me.
Even though Nick Fuentes says that a lot of his attacks aren't personal on other people, it's obvious that he does have personal grudges against people, the way that he'll bring up certain people in Twitter conversations and live streams and then go after them.
And I think there should be no harbor for cruelty, hatred.
So Nick says that there is no harbor for cruelty, but in reality, if you see a lot of his live streams, he tends to be very angry and vile towards other people.
I think a lot of people are starting to find out Charlie Kirk is not the patriot that he says he is. And so I look at what happened last night and I think to myself, this is totally a doable operation. You know, Charlie Kirk in the grand scheme of things is just some retarded idiot.
I guess the word that I would use, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, is reassurance. Because I think there's a legitimate need to reassure people. And this is kind of what I've been doing on these podcasts, that we don't want to harm anybody. We don't want to kill anybody. We don't want to harm anybody. Right. We just want to put America first.
There is an occult element at the high levels of society, and specifically among the Jews. So many of the people that are perpetrating the lies and the destruction on the country, they are evildoers. They are people that worship false gods. They are people that practice magic or rituals or whatever. And more than anything, those people need to be, when we take power, they need to be given the death penalty. Straight up. And I'm far more concerned about that than I am about even non-white people or mass migration. These people that are communing with demons and engaging in this sort of witchcraft and stuff, and these people that are suppressing the name Christ and suppressing Christianity, they must be absolutely annihilated when we take power. This is God's country. This is Jesus' country. This is not the domain of atheists or devil worshippers or perfidious Jews. This is Christ's country.
Personally, I'm not reassured at all.
And at that time, so it was like late December. It's actually funny. It was December 18th. I remember because that's an important date to me. And it's Joseph Stalin's birthday.
Oh.
I'm a fan.
You're a fan of Stalin's?
Mm-hmm. Always an admirer. But we don't need to go into that, I guess.
This is another thing that Nick Fuentes will do, is throw in these sort of provocative anecdotes, and it's part of his brand to be funny and bombastic, and he uses that as an excuse about why he says that, and his fans will say that he's trolling, but in reality, it's kind of hard to figure out what he really believes. Just to criticize Tucker Carlson on this point, he says that they'll get back to that point he made, Joseph Stalin being a fan of Joseph Stalin, and they never did in an interview.
You know, it was after the election last year. I put out this tweet and I said, your body, my choice on election night. And, I wasn't, look, I'm not going to apologize for it.
Again, another provocative statement, and Nick Fuentes doesn't apologize for it.
You had dinner with Trump
I did.
and Kanye.
Yes.
What did you think of that?
It was surreal because those are my two heroes. Those are my two, number one heroes of all time. I've always been a Kanye West fan.
You like the music first?
Yes. The music, the fashion, everything.
Really?
Yes.
I also think it's interesting that Kanye West is one of Nick Fuentes' heroes. Nick Fuentes talks about how women aren't the most modest, and yet Kanye's last two relationships were with women who weren't modest. Nick Fuentes talks about how there's a lot of immorality going on in the media, and Kanye West, talks about drugs and his sex life. And then Nick Fuentes doesn't seem to have any sort of conservative political arguments that align with Kanye's, except for the fact that they both blame Israel and seem to have this antagonism towards Jewish people. The rest of the conversation is about marriage, and Tucker Carlson asked Nick Fuentes why he's not married, why younger people aren't getting married. And then, of course, Nick Fuentes says this.
I'm like, why is anyone married? You tell me, why aren't people married?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's the women. The women are extremely liberal. No one talks about that. I don't even blame it on the women.
So Nick Fuentes does this thing a lot. Well, he'll blame the woman, he'll blame the Jews, and then later on he'll be like, no, my assistant is Jewish, and then he'll say something like, oh no, I don't really blame the woman. But it's obvious that the damage is already done because of the way that his fans tend to treat these groups of people, women, minorities, and people who are Jewish. Overall, I think Nicholas Fuentes is someone who grew up in a privileged community, and then he wasn't exposed to real competition up until he got to college. And then when he experienced that competition and realized that a lot of these opportunities that he wanted, that he felt were deserved to him, were not being given to him, he decided to be more provocative in order to gain more attention or to gain some way to build his brand. And he took a lot of things from Trump's playbook in terms of how to be in front of the camera, how to appeal to certain media groups, and then that, of course, has fueled what he is today. I think a lot of young men are attracted to Nick Fuentes because he never backs down, and he has a strong Catholic faith that kind of gives people an idea of where to set their morals or a foundation for their morals. And then he also gives answers as to why these young men are not being given opportunities that they are not getting, whether it be in school or in their careers or in terms of marriage and family. You're not married because it's the woman. You're not getting opportunities because there's immigration coming in and they're taking your jobs that should be given to us. You're not being given a fair play in the workforce because the Jews control either the media or the Jews control whatever other entity that is keeping you from doing the things that you want to do and things that you deserve as an American. Obviously, there are a lot of issues in terms of schooling for young men. I know that Richard Reeves is leading an institute to look into some of these background issues. And I also know that there are some real frustrations about how immigration is being handled, but I don't think going to this far right extreme is exactly going to provide us answers that will lead to solutions that will actually help the country. If you saw the interview, let me know your thoughts on it. I was not critical of Tucker Carlson in this video, partly because Tucker Carlson isn't Catholic, although he is Christian. And it was an interview that was over 2 hours, I'm pretty sure. And I think focusing on just Nick Fuentes, because he claims to be a Catholic, is sort of the best thing to do for this particular video. But let me know your thoughts and what you think of Tucker Carlson claiming to be Christian and also some of the ventures that he goes on.